Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina istafa amma ba'd. Are there any questions from last week's lesson? Any questions people have? So this is going to be the normal format. I'm going to come and ask you, are there any questions from last week? Just so that if you've revised and you've got some questions that comes up. Yeah, any questions from last week? No? Okay. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So now we come to this ibara where Imam Ibn Hajar Asqalani is writing his reason for authoring the Nuzhat al-Nazar. It says, فَسَأَلَنِي بَعْضُ الْإِخْوَانِ أَنْ أُلَخِّصَ لَهُمْ الْمُهِمَّ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. Yeah. Some friends told me or asked me to summarize the most important of the from those. So he's talking min dhalika, i.e. from the Imam Ibn Salah's book and all of the kind of different books written on that. So some of his friends or some of his students, ikhwan just means brothers, can be students, can be teachers, can also be friends, said for him to kind of summarize because the explanation has become quite a lot and people don't have the patience to go through big books. So because فَلَخَّصْتُهُ فِي أَوْرَاقٍ لَطِيفَةٍ سَمَّيْتُهَا نُخْبَةَ الْفِكَر. And I summarized it in very few pages, which I entitled Nukhbatul Fikar. So the word is fikar rather than fikr. Fikr is the plural of fikr, okay, chosen thoughts, or fi mustalahi ahli al-athar, in the mustalah of the people of athar or hadith. So nukhbatul fikr fi mustalahi ahli al-athar ala tartibin ibtakartuhu ala tartibin ibtakartuhu, using a sequence which I have introduced, wasabilin, and a method intahajtuhu, which I have again introduced or I have paved forward. Yeah. So what is the claim that he's making here? The claim that he's making here is that the his nukhba, so that's the matan, that's the asal, which we are looking at the sharah. His nukhba is written in a way that is different from Ibn Salah. As I mentioned, that Ibn Salah has 65 ulum, 65 different topics, and because Ibn Salah was dictating those, he was orally giving a lecture. Somebody just collected those lectures and just published them as a book. But he's saying that I have, excuse me, he is saying that I have given it a better organization. وَسَبِيلٍ انتهجته مع ما ضممت إليه من شوارد الفرائد. In addition, I have included within the nukhba different or scattered shawarid, scattered unique farida. Farida basically means unique. Shawarid al-faraid, unique pieces of information that was scattered throughout different books. I have collected it within the nukhba. وزوائد الفوائد, and also I've added more information and benefit. So that's, he's talking about the nukhba. Yeah. So now the nukhba, Imam Ibn Hajar Asqalani rahmatullahi alayh wrote the nukhba in 812 Hijri. He was 39 at the time. Okay. فَرَغِبَ إِلَيَّ ثَانِيًا. Then my friends, they wished for me a second time, أَنْ أَضَعَ عَلَيْهَا شَرْحًا يَحُلُّ رُمُوزَهَا, that I write a commentary on the nukhba which will open up its symbols, رُمُوزُهَا, وَيَفْتَحُ كُنُوزَهَا, and it will open up its treasures. ويوضح ما خفي على المبتدئ من ذلك, and to clarify what is missing or what is hidden from the beginners or for the beginners. فأجبته إلى سؤاله. I responded to his invitation. So here Imam Ibn Hajar Asqalani is saying that after I've written the Nukhba, it so happened that, just 1 minute, sorry. After I written the Nukhba, it so happened that some of my friends told me to expand it a bit more, because what I've done is when they told me to do khulasa of it, I summarized it too much that it became quite cryptic, and if you actually look at the Nukhba, some parts is quite cryptic. So he said it became quite cryptic, and it became quite difficult for the beginners to kind of understand everything, because it was too it was too cryptic, and it was too summarized. Okay, and one of the reasons for writing this also was that after he wrote the Nukhba, one of his teachers by the name of Kamal Ash-Shummi, Kamal Ash-Shummi, he wrote the entire Nukhba in poetry form. Okay, and then Ash-Shummi's son, so Kamal Ash-Shummi was Imam Ibn Hajar's teacher. Now Ash-Shummi's son, Taqiyuddin Ibn Kamal Ash-Shummi, who was Imam Ibn Hajar's student, wrote a commentary on the father's poetry. Now when Imam Ibn Hajar, he read this, the poetry and also the commentary, he came to the realization that both the father and the son kind of misunderstood some of the subtle points that he was trying to make. Okay, and then another one of his teacher by the name of Shamsuddin al-Zarkashi, who basically died in 813, right, 1 year after the Nukhba was written, also requested to Imam Ibn Hajar to write a commentary on that. Imam Ibn Hajar started writing the commentary of the Nukhba called Nuzhat al-Nazar. Okay, in 818, 5 years after Az-Zarkashi passed away. So there were a number of catalysts. People were saying that it's too summarized, and people were, and then this incident, and he actually alludes to that here later. He says, لأن صاحب البيت أدرى بما فيه. He alludes to the fact that people were doing a sharah, and they weren't really getting his nuances, what he really meant, and therefore he decided to write a sharah himself. So he says, فَأَجَبْتُهُ إِلَى سُؤَالِهِ. I responded. So this إِلَى سُؤَالِهِ might be Shamsuddin al-Zarkashi. إِلَى سُؤَالِهِ, to his invitation. رَجَاءَ الْإِنْدِرَاجِ فِي تِلْكَ الْمَسَالِكِ, hoping to plunge into this path. What is this tilka? Fi tilka al-masalik. This tilka al-masalik is here. He refers to it. وأمثال ذلك من التصانيف. Yeah. He's talking about this here. أما بعد فإن التصانيف في اصطلاح أهل الحديث قد كثرت للأئمة في القديم والحديث. So he basically said there's many sources, and now that his friends and his teachers have told him to write a sharah, so he basically said that, okay, I will also want to be a part of that body of scholarship. رجاء الاندراج في تلك المسالك, with the hope of plunging into that way, that manhaj. فبالغت في شرحها, and I exaggerated in its commentary. في الإيضاح والتوجيه, in clarifying and also explaining. ونبهت على خفايا زواياها, and I have also made people alert about the the hidden, or what is hidden in the corners, in the different corners. لأن صاحب البيت أدرى بما فيه, because the owner of a house knows more what is inside his house. So he said, other people have done this, but I decided to do it because I am the author of the matan, and if I'm writing a sharh of my own book, then I'm the Sahibul Bayt, and Sahibul Bayt adra bima fihi. The Sahibul Bayt adra bima fihi is a muhawara, is a saying in Arabic, so he used it here. وظهر لي أن إراده على صورة البسط أليق, and وظهر لي أن إراده, and it became apparent to me that to present it إراده على صورة البسط sorry, to present it in a very expanded form is al-yaq, it is more appropriate. So he's basically saying that it became apparent to me that I should write a sharah which is quite long and pretty much stretched out. That is the most appropriate. And some of the times what he's done is he's actually brought in a lot of tangents. Now obviously these tangents are not without benefit, but he has brought in them. وَدَمْجِهَا ضِمْنَ تَوْضِيحِهَا أَوْفَقْ, and so this is the reason why I was stopping here, because the dhama'ir are different here. وَظَهَرَ لِي أَنَّ إِرَادَهُ, it became apparent to me that I present the sharh. Yeah, إِرَادَهُ أي إِرَادَ الشرح على صورة البسط وأليق. نعم علي. جي.
Assalamu alaikum. Someone is waiting to join.
So people are waiting to join? Okay, just 1 minute. Let me see who's waiting to join. I can't see anybody waiting to join, Ali Sab.
Okay, let me just check.
I've taken the waiting room off so people can just come in. People can come in now. Okay, I've taken the waiting room off. Yeah, so there is a this bit is a bit cryptic here. وَظَهَرَ لِي أَنَّ إِرَادَهُ, and it became apparent to me that I present it. What is it here? I إِرَادَ الشَّرْحِ على سورة البسط, that I present the commentary quite expanded. Yeah. وَدَمْجَهَا ضِمْنَ تَوْضِيحِهَا أَوْفَقْ. Now here the dhamir ha is not referring to the sharh, it's referring to the matan, ay nukhba. وَدَمْجُ النُّخْبَةِ ضِمْنَ تَوْضِيحِهَا أَوْفَقْ. And to interpolate the nukhba within its explanation is more appropriate. Yeah. What does that mean? So Imam Ibn Hajar Asqalani rahmatullahi alayhi says, ala tartibin ibtakartuhu wa sabilin intahajtuhu, that he's come up with a new methodology, right? That's point number one. Point number two, so what is the new methodology? The new methodology is basically his, the way that he's arranged it, it makes more sense logically, whereas Imam like Ibn Salah's one, there isn't a logical sense to the organization. So if you look at just the, if we just look at the, where is it? Right. So we look at the beginning. He starts with defining what hadith is, what Imam Ibn Salah does, but then he goes on to define a hadith from the point of view of wusul. Imam Ibn Salah doesn't do that. He doesn't broach the topic of that until 33. Ulum halfway through the book. So he's giving you, taking you through hadith, what is the isnad, different types of hadith that there are, and then he goes on to Sahih, Gharib, and then he goes on to Maratib al-Sahih. He goes on to then, once he's given you all the Maratib al-Sahih, then he can tell you what the types of problems there are, Ziyadatul Thiqa, Mahfuz, Shaz, again remaining within the discussion of Sahih. Then he goes on to the Aqsam of Mardud, Aqsam of Maqbul, Saqt fil Isnad, Saqt Ta'an fil Rawi. So there's a very kind of beautiful logic to everything, which that logic is not found in the book written by Imam Ibn Salah. Right, so that's the tariq that he has. He says tariqun ibtakartuhu, yeah, wa nahjin intahajtuhu. That's what he's talking about. But then he goes on to say, he says, وَدَمْجِهَا ضِمْنَ تَوْضِيحَ أَوْفَقْ, and to interpolate the matan within the ضِمْنَ تَوْضِيحِهَا, within the sharah, I found that more appropriate. Now, what does that mean? So Imam Ibn Hajar Asqalani rahmatullahi alayhi, he is using a methodology, yeah, in his sharah, which is called tariqatul damj. Okay, tariqatul damj basically means to include the matan within the sharah in such a way that you are not able to differentiate the sharah from the matan. Yeah. Normally we have, let's say we have something like this. Yeah. Okay. Normally we have something like this. This is the Mulla Ali Qari Sharah. Yeah. Of the Nuzha. You see Mulla Ali Qari has got the matan of the Nuzha there, and then this is a sharah, and it says وَلَا يَتَشَكَّكُ أَيْ لَا يَتَرَدَّدُ وَمَنْ لَهُ أَدْنَى مُمَارَسَةِ الْعِلْمِ أَيْ بِعِلْمِ الْحَدِيثِ بِخَبَرٍ أَيْ بِوَاسِطَةٍ. So you can see that he's taking the sentences out, and then he's commenting and he's differentiating exactly what is the matan and what is the sharah. Imam Ibn Hajar Asqalani rahmatullahi alayhi, he doesn't do this. What he basically does is, so look at this. Yeah. This is the Nukhba. Yeah. فَإِنَّ التَّصَانِيفَ في اصطلاح أهل الحديث قد كثرت وبسطت واختصرت فسألني بعض الإخوان أن ألخص لهم المهم من ذلك فأجبته إلى سؤاله. That the tasanif on the istilah of Ahlul Hadith is many. They have been expanded, they have been summarized. Some of my friends told me that I should write a summary of that. فَأَجَبْتُهُ إِلَى سُؤَالِهِ. I responded to the sayings, to the request, رَجَاءَ الْإِنْدِرَاجِ فِي تِلْكَ الْمَسَالِكِ. This is 3 lines, right, in the Nukhba. In the Nuzha, yeah. So if I was to, in the Nuzha, this is where we are, yeah. فإن تصانيف في اصطلاح أهل الحديث قد كثرت للأئمة القديم والحديث. And then he goes on to who has done that. Now, you wouldn't actually know at all just by reading the Nuzha that this is actually the sharah. You wouldn't know where the matan is. But all of this is actually the sharah. The matan is intertwined within that. Yeah. So فَسَأَلَنِي بَعْضَ الْإِخْوَانِ أَنْ أُلَخِّصَ لَهُمْ. You wouldn't know that this فَسَأَلَنِي بَعْضَ الْإِخْوَانِ أَنْ أُلَخِّصَ لَهُمْ مُهِمَّ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. That is actually the matan of the Nukhba. Then he says رَجَاءَ الْإِنْدِرَاجِ فِي تِلْكَ الْمَسَالِكِ. That is the matan of the Nukhba. You just by reading the Nuzha, you wouldn't know that. Okay, and the reason why is because the way that he's done the sharah in a methodology which he calls damj, tariqatul damj. Damj basically means that the entire matan, he's plunked it into the sharah without and weaved it into one narrative so that you are not able to differentiate between the sharah and the matan. That was his style. Both of them are his books, and he's able to do that. Yeah. Is that okay? Any questions before we move on?
Assalamu alaikum. Has any other scholar written a book with this method, or was it unique to Ibn Hajar? Was he the first to do it?
I'm sure others have. I'm sure others have done that. I haven't come across any, but I'm sure others have done that. I don't think Ibn Hajar is the first to have done that. Yeah. Okay. So he says, فَسَلَكْتُ هَذِهِ الطَّرِيقَ الْقَلِيلَةَ. So this is what he's saying. فَسَلَكْتُ هَذِهِ الطَّرِيقَ الْقَلِيلَةَ السَّالِكَ. I embarked on this seldom, قَلِيلَةُ السَّالِكَ, seldom trodden path, meaning that very few people actually use that methodology. Let's see what the Muhashi says. So he says لصعوبتها بالنظر إلى الطريقة الأخرى طريقة شرح الكلمة في مقابلها فقط. Says, well, this is quite difficult. So this is the muhaqqiq. Yeah, that's not Ibn Hajar. So he says, because to actually do that and weave the sharah into the matan into the sharah is it takes quite a bit of a task to do, and people normally don't do that. They just have a line by line commentary. So he says, first, فَسَلَكْتُ هَذِهِ الطَّرِيقَةَ الْقَلِيلَةِ السَّالِكَ. I embarked on this seldom trodden path. Basically means that others have done it. Okay, or else he would have said, I was the first one to do that. فَأَقُولُ, I say, طالبا من الله التوفيق فيما هنالك. I say, seeking from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala divine providence that there are. So now we actually start the hadith. الخبر عند علماء هذا الفن مرادف للحديث. Khabar, according to the ulama of this science, or of the fun is art. Yeah. Or this discipline, I will say. Discipline is synonymous to the word hadith. So the word khabar is synonymous to the word hadith. Khabar literally means news. Hadith also means talk. Yeah. There's a very interesting book by Taha Hussein called Hadith al-Arbi'a, Wednesday talk. So khabar means news, hadith means talk. The other thing is that hadith is as opposition to qadim. So qadim is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's words are not qadim, they are hadith. Now this is a question to you. What are the different ways when we say hadith? Okay, now we've gone through the meaning of hadith as in ما ثبت من أقوال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وفعله وتقريراته وخلقه وخلقه ذاتية وصفاتية. We've gone through that, so I'm not asking you for a definition of hadith. But how many ways are the word hadith used in common usage that you have come across? So this is a question to you. So one, the obvious one is hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What other way do you see in everyday usage we use the word hadith? Hussein?
News.
Okay, news. Okay. So let me give you another example. So when we say the hadith of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, right? Now, it's not the hadith of Umar, it's the hadith narrated by Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But we use the word hadith to refer to the sahabi who has narrated it. Does that make sense? So what are the different types of way that we use the word hadith?
Marfu.
No, the word hadith.
Okay.
Okay, are you understanding my question or you're not?
The only thing I know is khabar.
No, so that's fine. I'm saying the word hadith itself. What are the different types of you? Okay, I'll tell you. Okay, so sometimes we attribute the word hadith to a sahabi. Okay, the hadith of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu in the Sahih al-Bukhari. When we say hadith of Umar, it's a hadith of the Prophet. But we mean by that Umar is the narrator. Hussein.
Okay, hadith al-Jibreel, like for example, hadith al-Jibreel.
Yeah, so we use the word hadith to also refer to a major theme in the hadith. So hadith al-Jibreel, hadith al-Iman, hadith al-Nasiha. Yeah. So that's a third way that we use. So we use the word hadith to refer to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, but we also use the hadith to refer to a sahabi, meaning that this hadith has been reported from the Prophet ﷺ by that sahabi. Yeah. We also use the word hadith to allude to a theme in the hadith, and everybody knows what hadith Jibreel is. Yeah. Everybody knows the hadith, the pillar of Islam. Everybody knows what the hadith al-Nasiha is. Yeah. So we sometimes use the hadith to the topic because the hadith has become famous. What else do we use the hadith, a word hadith for?
Hadith Qudsi.
Okay. Hadith Qudsi. What else? Okay. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes the word hadith is used to refer, so this is more in technical, to use the hadith, we use the hadith to refer to a madar in the isnad. So sometimes we use the word hadith to refer to an isnad. For example, let's say the Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is there. Can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just put R, Rasul, Sahabi, yeah, and then we've got say Abdullah ibn Dinar. Dinar, yeah. Imam Malik. Shafi'i. This is an actual isnad. Right. This hadith is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, this is an isnad for a hadith. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the month is 29 days. The month is 29 days. So start your fast by seeing the moon, and start your Eid by seeing the moon. If it is cloudy, then depending on which riwayat we take, either calculate or finish 30 days. So there's two different versions of it. Okay, so this is the so this one, Ayyub al-Sakhtiyani version basically is faqduru lahu, Abdullah ibn Dinar, and then we've got Ayyub here as well, also takes from Abdullah. This is faqduru lahu. This one basically says فَأَكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ ثَلَاثِينَ. Right. This one hadith. The Sahabi is Abdullah ibn Umar. This hadith is found in Muwatta Imam Malik, the Musnad of Imam Shafi'i, the Sahih al-Bukhari. So if I can basically say the hadith of Bukhari. What would that mean? It means that the hadith is found in Sahih Bukhari. Yeah? If I say the hadith of Malik, chances are the hadith is found in Muwatta Imam Malik. But sometimes I may refer to a hadith and then refer to a madar or a person in the isnad, trying to draw out trying to draw our attention to that portion of the isnad. So I can basically say that the hadith of Malik, yeah, so we know which hadith we're talking about. Okay, now we can say the hadith of Malik refers to فَأَكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ ثَلَاثِينَ. Right. So when we say Hadith Malik, then it basically means that the two students who narrate from Imam Malik, the Shafi'i and Muhammad ibn Muslim al-Qa'nabi, both of them are narrating that word. So rather than saying Imam al-Shafi'i narrates that and Muhammad ibn Muslim al-Qa'nabi narrates that, we basically say that the Hadith of Malik in this riwayah has got this word. So we have just referred to Imam Malik as the Madar of the Isnad. So we can basically say that most of the students in the Hadith of Abdullah ibn Dinar narrates فَأَكْمِلُ الْعِدَّةَ ثَلَاثِينَ. So to refer to particular people in the Isnad, right, we may refer to their line of Isnad as their Hadith. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, you will come across that quite a lot. Okay, so when we say the Hadith of Abdullah ibn Dinar, we talk about this hadith, but this is the hadith of Abdullah ibn Dinar, means that everybody else below him in the isnad, he is the one he's the madar, or he's a common link of the isnad. That's a technical usage. Okay, is that okay?
No.
Yes.
Yep. So before we start with the going into what is khabar, there are some technical points that you need to mention, and these technical points will be, you'll need to remember that throughout the entire Ulum al-Hadith that you read, any kind of Ulum al-Hadith. Number one, when we are talking about Ulum al-Hadith, and when we're talking about Sahih, Da'if, and Isnad analysis and all of that, everything related to Ulum al-Hadith, there is a cutoff point, right? And we are only talking about what is known as the Asr al-Tadween. Yeah? The Asr al-Tadween. Asr al-Tadween is when the Ahadith were being compiled into collections. Once the Ahadith have been compiled into collections, when the Ahadith have been compiled into collections, then a lot of this stuff related to Sahih, Da'if, and all of this Ulum al-Hadith and Isnad, etc., really has no meaning. Okay, because Ulum al-Hadith is about ascertaining whether the Prophet ﷺ said what is purported to be said or not. And the fact that Bukhari has mentioned those ahadith in his book basically means that according to him, he agrees that the Prophet ﷺ said those. So all of this Ulum al-Hadith is time-bound to what is known as the Asr al-Tadween. Now, majority of the ahadith, so we have a Sheikh Sharif Hatim al-Auni basically says by the 4th century, 4th Islamic century, so 300, by the end of the 300, all of the ahadith have been collected, right? And that's kind of gives us a date. However, Imam al-Dhahabi basically says that still hadith collections or collecting of hadith and writing them down and putting them down in books carried on all the way up to the 6th century, and then somewhere between the 4th and the 6th century, all of the ahadith have been collected into books. Okay, so if we were to take the majority, which is the end of the 300s, all of the ahadith has been written. That gives a date. That this Ulum al-Hadith is basically just looking into. So it only refers. So the isnad, and the importance of the isnad for the purpose of establishing a hadith is only up to the time of the Asr al-Tadween. After that, the isnad really doesn't have that significance of establishing a hadith. It has a significance of barakah. Yeah, it has to, because once the book has been published, once the book has been published, and the book, what it means by a book being published means that somebody has compiled a book, let's say Bukhari, and then he goes and reads it out into public. That basically means that the book is published. In our kind of understanding, publishing means you have to go to our printers and then the printing combines the book. No, publication has different meanings. Even today, nowadays, when you upload something on a blog, you say, I published it on a blog. So publishing is not necessarily writing a book and then getting it printed and bound. No, publishing basically means to publicly make it available. So when Imam Bukhari, for the first time, he went and he read his book out in front of everyone, he has published his book because he has publicly announced it, publicly mentioned the content. This is what publication is. Once a book has been published, right, then the isnad, for the purpose of establishing those ahadith, really doesn't really mean anything because it's published. People know. Now all you need to do is just go to the book, open the book or your notes, and you find, okay, it's in that book. The isnad still has a function of barakah, number one, and number two, also isnad has a function of the book being transmitted, right? Riwayat, and the book has been, so there is a riwayah, or there is a strong transmission that the book has been accurately in every single generation. Because remember, there was still handwriting. So what does it mean by an ijaza? Ijaza basically means that when a student goes, so the muhaddith, he dictated his lessons and the student wrote down everything. Then what you have a concept which is called ard, reading back to the muhaddith. A student will read back to the muhaddith from his notes, and the muhaddith is happy that this is an accurate representation of what he has mentioned. Will give the student an ijaza. Okay, your nuskha or your version is exactly the same as mine. You can go and make more nuskhas and transmit and read from that. This is the purpose of ijaza. Okay, so that the books themselves are preserved through the ijaza. The other thing is that ijaza also maintains the understanding of the hadith. So the understanding of the hadith has also been passed down through as-sanad al-muttasil. However, as far as establishing a hadith is concerned, as far as establishing a hadith is concerned, whether it's sahih or da'if or not, then after the asr al-tadween, the isnad really doesn't have a value for that purpose. And this is why Imam Ibn Salah makes a very controversial statement in his Muqaddimah Ibn Salah, which every single scholar that wrote a sharah or something who came after him, they critiqued him on that. And that is that Imam Ibn Salah says that after the Asr al-Tadween, after Bukhari and Muslim, right, only the ulama of the Asr al-Tadween, only their classification of hadith should be accepted. When they say something is sahih, it should be accepted. When they say something is da'if, it should be accepted. After the age, nobody has got the audacity or the capability or the expertise to declare a hadith is to be sahih or da'if. So he says that. It's in the beginning of the Muqaddimah of Ibn Salah. But obviously, everyone has critiqued him. Imam Suyuti critiques him in Tadrib Rawi, and he says, well, no, Bukhari and Muslim, many ahadith were not known to Bukhari and Muslim. They were written later on. So this is what I mentioned, that Imam Zahabi says somewhere between the 4th century and the 6th century, all of the ahadith became written down. So as far as the value of the isnad is concerned, the value of the isnad that we're reading here, for the purpose of establishing whether the Prophet ﷺ said this hadith or not, the value of the isnad is only confined to the Asr al-Tadween. After the Asr al-Tadween, the isnad has no value for that purpose. The isnad has value for barakah. The isnad has value for ijaza of correct transmission of a book. The isnad has a value for correct understanding of the hadith, but it doesn't have value for establishing a hadith or not. Does that make sense? Yeah. So most of this stuff here, we are talking about the Asr Tadween. Yes, Hussein, you have a question?
Yes. So just to see if I've understood it correctly, what you're saying. So he's saying that after the Asr al-Tadween, there really and truly there's no point in kind of looking into doing research to try and determine if something is sahih or not. Is that correct? Have I understood that correctly?
Yes, that's what he's saying. but Imam Ibn Salah was incorrect here, because there were so many books that were published afterwards and which they haven't been collected. Okay. Okay. Let's say somebody like Sunan Ibn al-Jarud. Let's say Ibn al-Jarud has written a book, after al-Bukhari, called Sunan Ibn al-Jarud. And in there, he has innamal a'malu bin niyat in there. Oh, we don't need to look into and ascertain innamal a'malu bin niyat, right? Because this has been done by Bukhari, Muslim, and others. Yeah? There might be another hadith, there might be a hadith of Jibreel in there, right? Again, we do not need to look at that, right? Because it's already been done. But there might be a hadith which this is the first time somebody has ever seen this hadith. Right? Then you need to do isnad analysis. But what I'm basically saying, that's what Ibn Salah basically said, and people are critiquing. I'm basically saying that most of the stuff that we learn in Ulum al-Hadith, right, they are related to the Asr al-Tadween. They actually have got no benefit after the Asr al-Tadween. That's what I'm saying. All of this discussion is based on Asr al-Tadween. Now, you can say somebody like, so what about, can we not do hadith analysis now? Yes, we can. And especially if there is new materials coming up and new books are being published, where in hindsight we can go and reassess the works of the mashayikh, and we might come up with something new. But what I'm basically saying, that the majority of ulum al-hadith, it relates to that Asr al-Tadween, and after the Asr al-Tadween, it doesn't really, so for example, let's say tadlis. Yeah, tadlis basically means when a rawi misses out his teacher and narrates from his grand teacher, giving the impression that he's directly narrating from his grand teacher, and that the grand teacher is his teacher, and he never heard from his teacher. Yeah. So do you understand what tadlis is?
Yes.
Let's say a hadith in Sunan al-Tirmizi. The hadith is in Sunan al-Tirmizi. Yeah. And we find that this hadith is, there's a hadith, Sunan al-Tirmizi, and we find that there's tadlis in this hadith, right? So Imam Tirmizi gives a hukum on the hadith. Yeah. That's fine. But let's say now, between me and Imam al-Tirmizi, there's about 31 people in my sanad, right? Let's say somebody, from me, 15 people onwards from the mashayikh, he's done tadlis, and he's missed out his teacher, and he's narrated directly from his grand teacher, right? Would that have an effect on the hadith? That's a question I'm asking you, Hussein.
No,
it won't, because the hadith has been
post, if someone is exactly. So if it's kind of like post, there's no point doing tadlis. Post, like what's in
but it doesn't matter even if you do tadlis. It won't have an effect on the hadith itself, because the hadith is already documented in a book. So this is what I mean, that once an author documents the hadith in his book, then anything that comes after it doesn't matter if it's weak, or the isnad after is weak, or isnad is broken, or isnad is mursal, any isnad that comes after that doesn't really have an effect on the hadith. It's only from the author to the Prophet ﷺ, that bit. Okay, this is the first century, the second century, the third century, fourth century, maybe fifth century. That bit is the important bit where all of these terminologies will apply. Once a hadith has been documented in a book, none of these terminologies has any meaning for that, because I don't care. Let's say my teacher, right? He did tadlis, and he basically said he heard from his grand teacher, and for whatever reason he's missing out his teacher, right? Okay, we might give another judgment why he's doing that, but that won't have an effect on the hadith. So his tadlis doesn't have an effect on the hadith at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Hussein, others, have you understood? Others, have you understood the point that I'm making? Yes. Yeah. So all of ulum al-hadith, in a way, only relates to up to the point well, majority of it, I won't say all of it because they talk about transmission of books and things like that. All of it, and the adatu tahammul, haddathana, an, and tadlis, and akhbarana, and all of this. It's only in that 400 or 500 years we're talking about. After that, it doesn't. It's not necessary. Ji Fahad Sab.
Sheikh, so the Asr Tadween is the time of Bukhari and Muslim, or is it like first 300 or 400 years?
So this is why I said Sheikh Hatim Sharif Al-Auni says that by the end of the 4th century, all al-Hadith has been collected. So that's end of the 3rd century, end of 300s. But I mentioned that Imam al-Zahabi mentions that somewhere between the 4th century and the 6th century, all of the hadiths have been collected. He doesn't give actual date. He says somewhere between the 4th and the 6th century. Okay, meaning that then we have a dating, right? That anything after if anything after the 6th century, do you understand? We don't that's the Asr Tadween up to end of 500. Yeah, is that okay? Awesome.
Ji.
Okay. So that was the first principle, right? So the first principle was about the isnad. The value of the isnad is for the purpose of establishing hadith. I'm not saying that the isnad has no value afterwards. I'm saying for the purpose of establishing the hadith, the value of the isnad is only, and all of these terminologies only are for up to Asr Tadween. That's point number one. Point number two is that primarily the Ulum al-Hadith deals with the isnad. Very rarely does it deal with matan. And the reason why that is because in Ulum al-Hadith, we are trying to establish whether the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it or not. And the way we establish whether the Prophet ﷺ said something or not is to see how accurately that piece of information has been transmitted down in subsequent generations. So primarily, it's dealing with the isnad, not exclusively, but primarily it's dealing with the isnad. Yeah. The next principle, third principle, which is very important, is that a hadith is made up of many different isnad strands. Yeah, do you accept that? Do you understand what that means? A hadith is made up of many different isnad strands, which are known as turuqul isnad. Yeah, if I was to give you an example of the turuqul isnad, let's see if I can find it. So this is the isnad of the hadith of Niyya that I developed. If you want to just have a look at this. Yeah, this is the isnad of the hadith of Niyya. I'm going to make it small because you don't need to see the names, but you just see visually. You can see that if we start from here, we follow it through all the way. That's one isnad strand. That's another isnad strand. That's a third isnad strand. That's a fourth isnad strand. So many isnads bundle up together to make or to inform a hadith. Right? Is that okay? These are just obvious things, but it just needs to be mentioned. Yeah. Okay.
So quickly, on that one. So if we're counting the strands, Ibn Manda is 1, Bukhari is 2, Nasai is 3, Tahawi is 4.
Yeah.
And so on and so on. Okay.
Yeah, but Bukhari has many isnads. He's got 1, he's got 2, he's got more isnads. Yeah, he's got 3. So Bukhari might have. Bukhari actually he has that hadith 7 times. So he's got 7 isnads for that. Yeah.
Okay.
And the isnads, they merge into each other. So you can see that this, let's say Imam Nasai and Imam Tahawi, right? They're narrating, but they're narrating here, and all of this isnad is bundling up to one person, Abdullah ibn Maslama al-Qa'nabi. And then Abdullah ibn Maslama al-Qa'nabi, Yahya al-Qaza ibn al-Qasim ibn Wahab, Ashhab ibn Abdulaziz, all of them are bundling up to Imam Malik. Yeah, and then Sulaiman ibn Bilal, Malik, Sufyan ibn Uyayna, all of them are bundling up to Yahya ibn Sa'id. Yeah, so these people where you get bundles, yeah, you get bundles. These are called madar of the isnad. So Yahya ibn Sa'id is the primary madar of the isnad. Okay, the common link, but also these Lays ibn Sa'ad, Abdullah ibn Mubarak, Hamad ibn Zayd are also partial madars of the isnad because they've got many bundles coming out of them. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yep.
So ahadith are made out of isnad strand. Now the next bit is important. Ahadith is judged by its strongest isnad. Okay, let me say this again. Ahadith is judged by its strongest isnad. So one hadith, or by hadith we mean a matan. One matan, it might have 10 isnads. Out of those 10, 2 of them might be mawdu', yeah? 2 of them might be, weak, right? 6 of them, or 5 of them might be hasan, and 1 of them might be sahih. That hadith is sahih, right? Because the hadith is judged by its strongest isnad. Yeah, and it's because of this that so many ulama, because to find the strongest isnad means that you need to have a lot of data. You need to have a lot of data, and then you need to be able to explore all of the isnad strands. And sometimes you probably don't have enough data, and that's why it's also been the amal of the some of the latest scholars. Rather than saying "Hada hadithun sahihun," yeah, "Hada hadithun," so that this is a hadith which is sahih, they are more careful and they say "Hada hadithun sahihun bihada al-isnad," or "Hada hadithun da'ifun bihada al-isnad." That this hadith, with this isnad is da'if. What he means, so a lot of the time, Imam Nuruddin al-Haythami, in his Majma' al-Zawaid, Bakhr al-Zakhair, and other books, he uses that methodology. هذا الحديث ضعيف بهذا الإسناد. That this hadith with this isnad is da'if, meaning that he's not actually giving a hukum on the hadith, he's giving a hukum on the isnad. It may be that the hadith might be sahih, but he just doesn't have that data in front of him. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So they say. Sorry, say that again.
Just a quick question that comes to mind. So if you imagine you've got 6 isnads, and then say 5 are da'if or problematic, and 1 is sahih, you're saying it's going to be judged by the sahih one. But
yes.
Doesn't that put some kind of doubt or around the whole thing, because there's more doubt or shubuhat than there is certainty?
If out of those 6, let's say those 5 da'if didn't. Those 5 da'if did not exist, and only the sahih isnad existed, would you say sahih?
Yeah.
Yeah. So irrelevant of, irrespective of, independent of the others, you need to look at. So this is how the muhaddithun will look at it. They will look at it independent of the other isnads, because this isnad, if all of the people are thiqah, right, then there's no need to look at non-thiqah to judge them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, because it's not to do with how many people have said it, it's to do with the quality of those people. There might be 10 of them in the class, 9 of them can be last benches, 1 of them can be first. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes. So let's go back to the asl. A hadith is judged by its strongest isnad. Yeah. And following from that is an isnad is judged by its weakest narrator. Repeat that to me again, Hussein.
So a hadith are judged by its strongest isnad, and an isnad is judged by its weakest narrator.
Yeah, an isnad is judged by its weakest narrator. So if there is a, let's say in the isnad, if we were to go back to this isnad, yeah, and all of these are sahih. All of these are. So let me put somebody who's weak. Yeah. Yeah. It's actually the other way around. Sorry. Right. So we have this isnad. We got Ayyub al-Sakhtiyani, Nafi Abdullah ibn Dinar. We've got Malik, and we had Muhammad ibn Maslama al-Qa'nabi there, right? But we've got Imam Malik narrating from Abdul Karim ibn Abi al-Mukhariq, right? Abdullah ibn Umar. Now, Abdul Karim ibn Abi al-Mukhariq is a weak rawi. So Abdul Karim ibn Abi al-Mukhariq, because he's a weak rawi, he will bring this entire strand of the isnad down. Because of him, this Malik isnad from Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that basically will be declared as weak, because Abdul Karim ibn Abi al-Mukhariq is the weakest link in this isnad. And the reason why is because how can we ascertain? Imam Malik is a thiqa rawi, Imam Shafi'i is a thiqa rawi. How can we ascertain that Abdul Karim ibn Abi al-Mukhariq is accurately narrating from the Sahabi or the Tabi'i, and that the information that he's passed, how can we say with confidence that he has accurately narrated that? Because of that, Abdul Karim ibn Abi al-Mukhariq will bring down Imam Shafi'i and Imam Malik in that particular isnad. So that particular isnad will be declared weak, but doesn't mean the hadith would be weak, because the hadith will be judged according to the strongest isnad. And in this isnad, the strongest isnad might be Abdullah ibn Dinar, Ayyub al-Sakhtiyani, right? So that isnad is weak, but not necessarily the hadith. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So again, to recap, a hadith will be judged according to its strongest isnad, and isnad will be judged according to its weakest narrator. Yeah. Finally, the last asl is that the companions are not open for discussion. As-sahaba kulluhum udul. All of the companions are trustworthy, and therefore they are not open for discussion. So I've mentioned few asls. Number one is that for the purpose of establishing a hadith, only all of these ulum and isnad and everything is only valuable up to the asr al-tadween. Okay. Number two is primarily we are going to deal with the isnad, very rarely with the matan. Definitely we're not going to deal with the understanding and content of the matan, although we will see that Imam Ibn Hajar will talk later on. We'll do some in Mukhtalaf al-Hadith and Nasikh and Mansukh, and he's going to talk a bit about that. But primarily it will be about the isnad. Similarly, the other asal is that ahadith are made up of isnad bundles, or what are known as turuq al-isnad. Number four is that a hadith is judged according to its strongest isnad. And the next one is that an isnad is judged according to its weakest narrator. And then finally, a companion is not to be judged as sahaba kulluhum udul. Is that okay? Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Al-khabaru. Ji. Somebody's talking to me?
Yes, Sheikh. I just have a question. It's more, when I'm going through hadith databases like Durar, and I see a gradation that this hadith is da'if, then that will be for that particular isnad. It's not, there could be other hadiths where the isnad might be Hassan or something, right?
So give me a book.
Can I share screen? Because I could give you an example. Or
I might not have.
Oh, okay.
I might not have the powers. Let's see. Oh no, I am a host. So who is talking? Faisal, is it?
Yes.
Okay. No, I don't have. I don't have.
You don't have? Okay.
No, I don't have.
Okay.
So just read it out.
Okay, so let me just pull up the website. So this is from Dora. I pulled the hadith كلوا جميعا ولا تفرقوا فإن البركة مع الجماعة. And there's two sections, لغير المتخصص and للمتخصص. So when
I don't know which website is it you're looking at?
Dorar.net.
Dorar, let's see.
DORAR.net.
Okay. Yeah, carry on.
Okay, so I'm going to.
Is that Durar al-Saniyya?
Yeah, exact.
Okay. And you're looking at Mawsu'a al-Hadithiyya?
Yeah. And I put the hadith كلوا جميعا ولا تفرقوا فإن البركة مع الجماعة. And I went to the section, there's for non-specialists and for specialists. لمتخصص. I went to the specialist section. So, for example, the first result mentions that Ibn Hajar mentioned في سدنه من اتفق على ضعفه. But then, and another one, Ibn Mufli mentioned it's not daif. But then when I go to, what is it? The fifth result, it mentions Hassan. So I'm wondering, are they going?
So, okay, so this is, we've got it here, right? كلوا جميعا ولا تفرقوا فإن البركة مع الجماعة. So you're going to the متخصص.
Yeah, like exactly. So how would I determine, like, here, are they grading all the isnad or just from those particular books?
Let's see. So this is ترغيب والترغيب.
Yeah.
خلاص فيه عمرو بن دينار واهي الحديث. Right, okay. كلوا جميعا ولا تفرقوا فإن البركة مع الجماعة. المسألة آداب الشرعية. خلاصة الحكم محدث ابن المفلح إسناده ضعيف. Yeah, so what they're doing is here عمر بن الخطاب. Let me just check. فتح الباري لابن رجب إسناده ضعيف. كلوا جميعا الراوي المحدث ابن حجر الفتوح الربانية في سند من اتفق على ضعفه. So here what they're doing is they are individually going through each of the isnad of the hadith in that book, and they're giving a hukum on that isnad. I think here لغير المتخصص. No, even in the غير المتخصص they're doing that.
They're doing that. Okay.
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
In the Mutakhasis section, one of them mentions, Albani mentions this Hassan in the Sahih Jami. So in that sense, I get confused because I guess he's checking a different isnad. See number 6, where all the other muhaddithun are mentioning da'if. So, for something like this.
So normally I would stay away from Albani's classifications. There are serious problems with these classifications. Maybe sometimes we may have a look. I mean, my entire PhD thesis was a response to Albani. He looks at some things, he doesn't look at other things, and then he also has his own idiosyncrasies. So I will stay away from him. He's probably saying this is Hassan, but he's calling it Hassan li ghayrihi, which basically means that it is da'if. Yeah.
Hassan li ghayrihi will be da'if because if you have
Hassan li ghayrihi is da'if. Hassan li ghayrihi is a da'if hadith which is bumped up with many isnads.
Okay.
Yeah. Hassan li ghayrihi is normally a da'if hadith, right?
Okay, so basically this website, they're just giving it per isnad. They're not.
They're giving it per isnad. They're not giving it per hukum, the entire hadith.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. I'm just curious about that because I use this quite a bit.
These are good, but you just need to be cautious. Yeah.
Cautious, okay. Would you recommend it like a better website to go to?
Al-Ba'ith al-Hasithi. Let's see if in Al-Ba'ith al-Hasithi, that's one that I use. These are good to very quickly find hadiths, right?
Yeah. Ba'ith al-Hadithi, Sunnah.1. Okay.
Yeah. Here again, they're just giving ضعيف جدا. إسناده ضعيف. Sheikh Shu'aib al-Arnaut. Yeah, have you come across this name?
Yes.
So he's done quite a lot of, he's done the tahqiq of Sunan al-Tirmidhi, tahqiq of Sunan Abu Dawud. He's good. So
Good.
if go with his his classification. Don't go with Sheikh Albani's classification. There's a lot of mistakes in his classifications. Yeah.
Okay. Jazakallah for that. Okay. I guess I'll give you back. You have the screen. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. Al-Khabaru عند علماء هذا الفن مرادف للحديث. Khabar, according to the ulama of this discipline, is synonymous to hadith, right? Waqila. So now he's going to give a few more views. Okay. In the Nukhba, in the Nukhba, he doesn't do that. He just says he doesn't even define what a khabar is. He just goes straight into it. But here he's telling us what khabar is, and he's giving us a few views, right? And why he likes this top one. Waqila, it is said, al-Hadith ma ja'a ani Nabi sallam. Hadith is that which is from the Prophet sallam. Wal khabaru ma ja'a an ghayrihi, and khabar is that which is from others. Right? So hadith is from the Prophet sallam. Anything from the Prophet is hadith, and if somebody else mentions any piece of information, these are known as khabar. ومن ثم قيل لمن يشتغل بالتواريخ وما شاكلها الإخباري. And because of this, those who spend their time doing history and similar disciplines, these are known as ikhbari. وَلِمَنْ يَشْتَغِلْ بِسُنَّةِ النَّبَوِيَّةِ الْمُحَدِّثِ, and those who occupy themselves with the Sunnah Nabawiyya, they are muhaddith. So this is a distinction. Hadith is exclusive to the Prophet ﷺ. Khabar is for anybody else. So that's why you have ikhbari. The word khabar is primarily it's a usul al-fiqh terminology. Now when you go to usul al-fiqh, you see in the Sunnah section they always talk about khabar. They don't talk about hadith. So, and that's where this terminology has come in. Yeah, and that's why Ibn Hajar is saying is muradif lil hadith. وقيل بينهما عموم وخصوص مطلق, and it is said that between them is a general, specific, unrestricted relationship. What that basically means is that that one goes into the other, but the other doesn't go into the other one. Okay. فَكُلُّ حَدِيثٍ خَبَرٌ, that every hadith is a khabar. مِنْ غَيْرِ عَكْسٍ, however, not every khabar is an aks. So the am is the khabar, right? The khabar includes the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's words, but also the words of others. But the hadith is specific to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So therefore, every hadith is a khabar, but not every khabar is a hadith. وَعُبِّرَ هُنَا بِالْخَبَرِ لِيَكُونَ أَشْمَلَ, and khabar has been mentioned here. He's talking about himself, but doing it in the majhul, because it is more ashmal. It is more. Help me out in the translation here. Ashmal basically means that it is more comprehensive. Yeah. لِيَكُونَ أَشْمَلَ, because the word is more comprehensive. Because when we talk about hadith, we not only talk about hadith of the Prophet, we also talk about the hadith of the Sahabi, the Athar, things like that. Yeah. So now we've defined what khabar is. Imam Ibn Hajar Asqalani is happy with the terminology of khabar. He says, فَهُوَ بِاعْتِبَارِ وُصُولِهِ إِلَيْنَا, from the point of view that it has reached us. Yeah, from the point of view that it has reached us, there are different types of khabar. إِمَّا أَن يَكُونَ لَهُ طُرُقٌ, Yeah, either it has many pathways. Now from here, I isnad to all the way to here is jumla mu'tarida, is a tangent. Yeah. Imma ay yakuna lahu turuqun ay asanid. That's it. That's the end of the discussion. So now he's saying ay asanid kathira. What is turuq? Turuq is, so have you understood the mas'ala? That either the khabar that has reached us through many different isnad strands, turuq, many different pathways to isnads. Ay asanid kathira. That's the end of the discussion. Now he's going to go on to a tangent, do a lughawi discussion. لأن طرقا جمع طريق, because the word طرق is the plural of طريق. وفعيل في الكثرة يجمع على فعل, and the صيغة فعيل طريق, right, in جمع تكثير is done جمع with the صيغة of فعل بضمتين, and that's why he said إما أن يكون له طرق. So this is he's doing sharh here, إما أن يكون له طرق. Yeah, so now this is the sharh. He's doing sharh of why he used that word. Turuq basically means that is jam'a, asanid kathira. And the sigha of fa'il, when you have jam'a taqlil or jam'a qalil, then you do af'ila. So the if it was asanid qalila, then it would have been imma an yakuna lahu atriqa. But the fact that he said imma an yakuna lahu turuqun basically means that we're dealing with many isnads. Yeah. Wal muradu bituruqi al asanid. And what do we mean by turuq? Because turuq tariqa, pathways. By pathways we mean isnad, the asanid. Okay. So the khabar that reaches us either has many different isnads. So what does isnad mean? What is isnad? Right. Isnad is hikayatu tariqil matan. Hikayatu tariqil matan. It is to vocalize or to narrate the path to the isnad. Yeah. It is to vocalize the path to the isnad. That is different from sanad. Yeah. Give you an example. Let's see. Let's just go back to the internet. Do you know Shamila is also on the entire Shamila is on the internet now. You don't need to download it. It's not as good as the program, but it's still okay.
I guess we would just Google Maktaba Shamila and we'll find it.
Say that again.
Like we just need to Google Maktaba Shamila.
Yeah, it's here. It's called Turath. Turath.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is Sahih al-Bukhari, right? Just randomly just open. حدثنا أبو نعيم قال حدثنا سيف قال سمعت مجاهد يقول حدثني عبد الله بن الصخربة أبو معمر قال سمعت ابن مسعود يقول علمني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وكفي بين كفيه التشهد. Okay. So what is the isnad here and what is the sanad? Yeah. So sanad is what you can see. You can see the names of the people: Abu Nu'aym, Saif, Mujahid, Abdullah ibn Sakhbara, Ibn Mas'ud. That is the sanad. Isnad is slightly different. Isnad is hikayatu tariqatil matan. Isnad is to say حدثنا Abu Nu'aym قال حدثنا سيف قال. So it's the vocalization of the isnad or of the sanad. Sanad is the chain, and isnad is the vocalization of that chain. Hikayatu tariq al-matan. Does that make sense? Yeah, does that make sense? In the technical terminology, there is a slight difference between sanad and isnad. Sanad is the chain itself, the name of people, and isnad is the hikayatu tariq al-matan, is the vocalization of that. That is a technical distinction. However, It is just abstract. Nobody uses it. Even Imam Ibn Hajar Asqalani, after mentioning this, doesn't even use it. So the word sanad and isnad interchangeably are used to mean the sanad itself, right? But because we're doing the book, learn the technical definition. Sanad is the name of the chain of transmitters, and isnad is the vocalization and reading of the isnad. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Hussein Sab, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. So isnadu hikayatu tariq al-matan. وتلك الكثرة أحد شروط التواتر. And this kathra, it says asanid kathira. Yeah. This numerous names is one of the conditions of the concurrent hadith, the massively transmitted hadith. I've translated it as concurrent. You can say massively transmitted hadith. One of the conditions. إذا وردت بلا حصر عدد معين, when it is reported or transmitted without a specific number. Yeah, the kathra doesn't have a specific number. Some people have given numbers. So, for example, some people said that, so Imam Suyuti talks about this in the Tadrib al-Rawi, 4 people is the minimum for a hadith to be mutawatir, because the number of witnesses in zina is 4 people. Somebody else said that it is 5 people because that's the number of people, number of times that you do li'an. Yeah. Some people said 7. Some people said 10 because that is the minimum of jam'a kathra. Others basically said 12. وَبَعَثْنَا مِنْهُمْ 12 نَقِيبًا 40. وَاخْتَارَ مُوسَى 70 رَجُلًا لِمِيقَاتِنَا, that's 70, so on and so forth. Imam Ibn Hajar Asqalani says that what is a condition in mutawatir tawatur is that it has to be narrated with kathra, but bidun adad muayyin bila hasr. So if there is no fixed number, then how do we know that it is massively transmitted, or it's how would we know? So then we look at the next piece, or what we basically do, rather than looking at quantitative, we look at qualitative. بل تكون العادة قد أحالت تواطؤهم على الكذب وكذا وقوعه. That there should be such a large number of people that naturally, normal situation makes it impossible. In a natural situation, it makes it impossible تواطؤهم على الكذب, for all of them to be coincidentally lying. Coincidentally, or all of them. So تواطؤهم على الكذب basically means that all of them are conspiring to lie. وكذا وقوعه, and similarly are actually lying. منهم اتفاقا من غير قصد. So all of them are conspiring to lie, or that the hadith, that number is just coincident. كذا وقوعه منهم اتفاقا من غير قصد. That either it's everybody, it's impossible for them to conspire to lie, and also it's impossible for them to coincidentally lie. It will be a massive coincidence if every single person is lying. That is the condition of the mutawatir as far as kathra is concerned, rather than a stipulated fixed number. فلا معنى لتعيين العدد على الصحيح. There is no meaning of fixing a number according to the dominant opinion. ومنهم من عينه في الأربعة. There are some who have fixed it to 4 and 5 and 7 and 10 and 12 and 40 and 70 and other numbers. وتمسك كل قائل بدليل جاء فيه ذكر ذلك العدد, and every single one of them have brought forward dalail in which dalail that particular number was mentioned. فَأَفَادَ الْعِلْمَ, and therefore that has given a benefit of that fixed number. Yeah. وَلَيْسَ بِلَازِمٍ أَن يَضْطَرِدَ فِي غَيْرِهِ. It is not necessary that this same fixed number applies into other situations لاحتمال الاختصاص, because it may be that in the place where that number has been mentioned, that is khas only to that, and it shouldn't be extended to something else. I mean, this bit was very, very difficult to translate. I mean, I struggled with it. I fought with it quite a lot, probably about 3 hours messing around with it. Let's see how I translated it. I keep losing my translation. I need to make it more apparent. Yeah, I struggled with it quite a bit just to get the nuance right. So it's basically saying that, yeah, that's fine. You've got the hadith or you've got the Quran that has that number, and that number has given you a benefit, but that doesn't mean that number can give that same amount of benefit somewhere else, because it might be that that number is only khas to the ma'khaz. Yeah. Yeah, put a thing in there because I'm still not happy with it. Every advocate has held onto evidence where these numbers have been mentioned, which conveys certainty of their view. However, these numbers may be specific to that text and may not necessarily instill confidence beyond the text they are mentioned in. Yeah, so that's the. I mean, I really, really fought with that. That translation. It's because the Arabic semantics and the syntax is very different to the English syntax. So you need to kind of mess around quite a bit. فَإِذَا وَرَدَ الْخَبَرُ كَذَلِكَ. And when the khabar is transmitted in that way, meaning that in such a large number of people that it is impossible for all of them to be either conspiring to lie or coincidentally lying, if that khabar is transmitted in that way, and added to that وَانْضَافَ إِلَيْهِ أَن يَسْتَوِيَ الْأَمْرُ فِي الْكَثْرَةِ, added to that is that the mentioned many transmission lines is the same from the beginning to the end. Okay, so that the numbers don't dip. So Imam Ibn Hajar says, what does istiwa mean? وَالْمُرَادُ بِالْإِسْتِوَاء أَلَّا تَنْقُصَ الْكَسْرَةِ, that this many number doesn't dip al-madhkura fi ba'd al-mawadi, in some places. La alla tazid. So it's basically saying what it means is that it doesn't dip beyond that kathra. It can increase more and more and more. Is it ziyada matluba huna min bab al-awla? Because ziyada is obviously more liked here. Wa yakuna. So that's the next question. So that's the second condition. So the first condition is it has to be, so you can call it second or third. First condition is it has to have many different isnad turuqs, and there so many isnad turuqs that they can't be conspiring to be lying or can't be coincidentally lying, and that number has to be constant throughout the entire transmission line from the beginning to the end. It can increase, but it can't decrease. That's the third. And the fourth one is وَأَن يَكُونَ مُسْتَنَدُ إِنْتِهَائِهِ الْأَمْرُ الْمُشَاهِدْ أو المسموع لا ما ثبت بقضية الصرف كالواحد نصف الاثنين. And that the musnadidu intinaihi, that the sanad leads up to, right? Here is a bit confusing. It leads up to basically means that the sanad starts with in such a way al-mushahad al-masmu', that which is either visible or either one is auditory. La ma thabata bi qadiyat al-aql. That not that which can be which is only noetic and only intellectual. So basically the sanad has to start with سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أخبرني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. It has to have that kind of sensory transmission. It can't basically be that a Sahaba is pontificating and saying that I guess this is what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam meant. Or for whatever. It can't be khiyali. It has to have some kind of hissi. That's what it means. فَإِذَا جَمَعَ هَذِهِ شُرُوطُ الْأَرْبَعَةِ. And when all of these four conditions are mentioned, come together, and what are these four conditions? عدد كثير أحالت العادة تواطؤهم أو تفاوقهم على الكذب. Such a great number that it is impossible for all of them to conspire or to coincide on lying. رووا ذلك عن مثل من الابتداء وإلى الانتهاء. That this is from the beginning to the end. وكان مستند انتهائهم الحسة. And the end of that, the end here basically means the asal, where it starts from is his. Yeah. Now, it looks like this is 3 here. Okay. But actually it is 4, because we can say adadun kathirun and then ahalat tawatum, it can be 1. But you can merge it. But this one is, so adadun kathirun is 1. أحالت العادة تواطؤهم is 2. ورووا ذلك عن مثلهم is 3. وكان مستند انتهائهم الحس is 4. Right? Now here وانضاف إلى ذلك أن يسحب خبرهم إفادة العلم لسامعه. Imam Ibn Hajar did not mention that here before. So this is actually a 5th one. So the muhaqqiq has actually made a mistake. عدد كثير should have been 1. أحالة should have been 2. رواه ذلك should have been 3. كان مستند انتهائهم الحس should have been 4. This one is a 5th one, which Imam Ibn Hajar is adding on. Nobody has mentioned that as a condition of mutawatir. This is specific to Imam Ibn Hajar. Imam Ibn Hajar says وانضاف إلى ذلك أن يسحب خبرهم إفادة العلم لسامعه. And added to that is that the person who is receiving that mutawatir hadith should also recognize that this is giving him ilm daruri, this is giving him confidence knowledge. Now nobody actually that's an element of reception, isn't it? Whereas we are talking about mutawatir is about how it's been transmitted. Yeah, it's nothing to do with the receiver, it's to do with the transmission line. Here Imam Ibn Hajar is flipping it and he says the receiver has to basically also recognize and have confidence of the mutawatir. This is an added condition that nobody has said. This is a 5th condition that Imam Ibn Hajar is adding. فَهَذَا هُوَ الْمُتَوَاتِرِ. This is the definition of mutawatir. So Imam Ibn Hajar has given you 5 conditions, 4 which are generic, and then a 5th one which he has added himself. فَهَذَا هُوَ الْمُتَوَاتِرِ. This is the mutawatir hadith. Are there any questions?
Mawla, can you translate the point 2 again, please?
وَرَوَوْا ذَلِكَ عَنْ مِثْلِهِمْ مِنَ الْإِبْتِدَاءِ إِلَى الْإِنْتِهَاء. That one?
Yes.
And similar narration, it has been transmitted similarly from the beginning to the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Jazakumullah khair. I'm told to wrap up the class. Okay. Remember, next week there isn't a class. Inshallah, we will resume the week after. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam.